Luna. My voice echoed through the empty apartment, but the silence that answered me was not the normal silence of late afternoon. It was the kind of wrong, deliberate silence that only happens when something vital has been ripped from a space. I stopped at the living room door, the keys still dangling in my hand, as my eyes scanned every corner where Luna should have been waiting for me. Her bed by the window was gone. The toys she always scattered across the hardwood floor were gone. Even the bowls of water and food that were strategically placed near the kitchen counter had been removed. It was as if she had never existed. Luna. I called again, this time louder, even though my chest was already tightening with the terrible certainty that she wasn't there. I walked methodically through each room, checking closets, under beds, behind furniture. Part of me still hoped to find her hiding, playing some impossible game. But Luna didn't hide. She never hid. She was always there when I got home, tail wagging, her whole body trembling with excitement, ready to do her job. My phone vibrated against my hip. A message from my mother-in-law, Margaret. "Come here when you get home. We need to talk." The 20-minute drive to their house felt like hours. My hands remained steady on the steering wheel, despite the cold dread settling in my stomach like lead. 15 years working as a state benefits coordinator had taught me to separate emotion from action, but this felt different. This felt personal in a way that professional emergencies never did. Their house looked exactly the same as it always had. The yellow porch light cast familiar shadows on the front steps I had climbed thousands of times. Margaret's flower beds were still meticulously maintained, despite her constant complaints about money. Harold's truck was in the driveway, the same one I had helped him buy when his old one finally died. But when Margaret opened the door, her expression was blank, almost professional. No warmth, no concern about why I might be there. Just the slight impatience of someone who had a task to complete. "Where's Luna?" I asked without coming in. "We took her to a shelter," she said casually, as if she had told me she had rearranged the furniture in the living room. "Animals are too expensive when we can use that money for bills." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten, my breathing become shallow and rapid. Luna, who slept next to my bed every night, whose presence was the only thing that allowed me to sleep without nightmares. Luna, who detected my panic attacks before I did and knew exactly how to respond. "My name is Samuel, I'm 29 years old, and Luna had been my constant companion and lifeline for 3 years." "What shelter?" My voice came out steady, professional. Years of training taking over when emotion threatened to overwhelm me. "Does it matter?" Margaret shrugged, stepping back to let me in. "We needed the money you spend on her food and vet bills. Harold's medication is getting more expensive again, and you know how tight things have been." I nodded slowly, calculating. Bills are important. She seemed surprised by my calm response, maybe even disappointed. I could see it in her eyes. She had expected anger, tears, an emotional outburst she could dismiss as an overreaction. "I thought you'd understand," she continued, encouraged by the subject now that I wasn't arguing with her. "You're always so practical about money, so logical about these things." "I am," I agreed, following her into the living room where Harold sat in his recliner, remote control in hand, not looking at me. 3 years of therapy had taught me breathing techniques, anchoring exercises, ways to remain functional even when my world was falling apart. Those skills were serving me well now. But as Margaret went on explaining her practical decision, I wasn't thinking about grief or loss. I was thinking about paperwork. And they had no idea what they just cost themselves. If you're enjoying this family justice story, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happened next changed everything forever. Harold and Margaret thought they had made a smart choice about an expensive pet. But they didn't know that Luna wasn't just a pet. And when they discovered the truth, it would be too late to undo the devastating consequences they were about to face. "What shelter?" I asked again, keeping my voice under control. "City Animal Services," Margaret replied, settling back into her chair with a satisfied air of someone who had efficiently solved a problem. "They said Luna was a pretty little dog. She'll find a good home with people who can really take care of her." The implication was clear. I couldn't take care of her properly because I was wasting money on unnecessary luxuries instead of helping the family with essential needs. "How much do you think you'll save?" I asked. Margaret's face lit up. She loved talking about practical matters, budgets, savings, responsible financial decisions. "Well, that expensive dog food you buy, How much does that cost? $60 a month. And the vet bills. Remember when she had that ear infection last spring? $200 just for the antibiotics. The baths and grooming, Harold added, finally speaking without taking his eyes off the television. $40 every 6 weeks for what? To make her look pretty. And the toys, Margaret continued, gaining momentum. Those expensive puzzles you always buy her. $20, $30 each for pieces of rubber and string. I did the math in my head as they listed her perceived savings. They were calculating maybe $1,200 a year in expenses they considered frivolous. They had no idea what they had just done. You're right, I said. Those expenses really add up. Margaret leaned forward, pleased with my sensible response. And honestly, it's not like she's really necessary. I mean, she's sweet enough, but she's just a pet. It's not like you need her for anything really important. Just a pet. The words echoed in my mind as I kept my expression neutral. Luna, who had been specifically trained to detect the chemical changes that preceded my PTSD episodes. Luna, whose certification papers were filed in my home office along with her state disability services registration. Luna, who had cost $25,000 to train and was legally protected under federal disability law. You're absolutely right, I said, standing up. She was just a pet. Margaret smiled, feeling vindicated. I knew you'd see reason once you thought about it logically. Family has to come first, and we really are struggling with Harold's medical bills. I nodded and said goodbye, leaving them in the living room, satisfied with their practical decision and my mature response. But as I drove back to my empty apartment, I wasn't thinking about grief or loss. I was thinking about documentation. Back home, I went straight to my filing cabinet. The documentation was extensive, organized into labeled folders because 15 years as a state benefits coordinator had taught me to document everything. Luna's certification papers from the Service Dog Academy in Colorado. His registration with State Disability Services. The federal paperwork that classified him as durable medical equipment, not a pet. The psychological evaluation that qualified me for a service dog in the first place. Most importantly, the contracts and receipts showing exactly how much I paid for her training and the legal documentation of her status under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I never told my in-laws about the PTSD. I never explained why I sometimes went quiet during loud conversations. Why I preferred corners of restaurants. Why certain sounds made me freeze momentarily. They thought Luna was an expensive indulgence. An impulsive purchase by a young professional for a designer dog. They had no idea she was the reason I could function normally, sleep through the night, leave my apartment without anxiety attacks. But they were about to learn. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Screenshots of the text message summoning me to their house. A detailed account of our conversation, including direct quotes about Luna being just a pet and not needed. The name of the shelter where they took her. I also opened another folder on my desktop, one I hoped I would never use. For the past 2 years, I had been her financial safety net. Not through any formal agreement or family contract, but through the steady stream of emergencies they brought to me with increasing frequency. Harold's prescription drugs when insurance didn't cover the full cost. Margaret's car repair when the transmission finally gave out. The property tax bill they somehow forgot about until the notice arrived. I kept receipts for everything, not out of suspicion or any plan to use them against my family, but out of pure habit. 15 years of processing benefit claims and disability applications had trained me to document every transaction, every conversation, every decision. The total was staggering. $63,412 over 24 months. But while they celebrated their smart decision to save money on an expensive pet, they didn't realize they had just cost themselves far more than they could ever imagine. Keeping receipts for 15 years as a benefits coordinator taught me that every document has its moment of importance. I never imagined that moment would come like this. I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank spreadsheet. I started typing in the dates, amounts, and descriptions of every transfer, every emergency I had handled without question. January 2023, $2,847, Harold's emergency surgery that insurance didn't cover completely. February 2023, $1,200, Margaret's car transmission repair. March 2023, $890, heating bill that came in higher than expected. The list went on. Page after page of generosity that I offered freely, with no strings attached, no expectations of return. Just because they were family. Because I had a steady job and they were going through a rough patch. But as I typed, my mind was processing something much deeper than numbers. Luna wasn't just missing, she was stolen. Certified medical equipment, protected by federal law, taken from my home without permission and handed over to strangers as if it were disposable trash. 3 years of therapy had taught me to recognize when my breathing became irregular, when my heart rate quickened, when the first signs of a panic attack began to manifest. Now, without Luna to detect these chemical signals before I even noticed them myself, I had to rely solely on my own coping skills. Deep breaths. Countdown. Sensory anchoring. But the anger was different. The anger was cold, calculated, and growing with every entry on the spreadsheet. My phone rang. Harold. Sam, his voice was tense, almost a whisper. Margaret didn't want me to call, but, did you really get Luna back? I got my stolen medical equipment back, I corrected him. Silence. Then, medical equipment? Luna is a certified service dog, Harold. She costs $25,000. She's protected by federal law. You literally stole my medical equipment to save $60 a month. We didn't know, he began. You didn't ask, I interrupted. You decided for me. About my property. About my health. About my life. Look, Samuel, I understand that you're upset, but family is family. We made a mistake, but you can't just cut us off because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Harold, my voice came out dangerously calm. You came into my house, took my certified medical equipment, and gave it to strangers. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft of federally protected property. You're being dramatic. I'm being accurate. And you're about to find out exactly how accurate I can be. I hung up before he could respond. I returned to the spreadsheet. The final total flashed on the screen, $63,412 over 24 months. An average of $2,642 per month. Over $31,000 per year in direct financial support. I opened my banking app and began making systematic changes. The automatic transfer that covered Harold's medication, cancelled. The joint savings account I set up for their emergencies, closed. The credit card I co-signed for Margaret's medical expenses, suspended. The direct deposit that covered internet and phone, terminated. Every financial connection between us severed with a few taps on my phone screen. Then I called City Animal Services. Animal Services, this is Jennifer. Hi, I'm calling about a female dog that was brought in today. A golden retriever mix named Luna. Let me check our intake records. Yes, she's here. Beautiful dog, very calm and well-trained. Are you interested in adoption? She's mine. She's a certified service dog and was taken from my home illegally. The pause was long. Sir, the people who brought her in said she was their dog. They had to give her up due to financial difficulties. They lied. I have all the documentation. I'm coming to get her. It took 3 hours and a stack of paperwork to sort everything out. Luna's certification from the Service Dog Academy. Her registration with State Disability Services showing me as her designated handler. Federal documentation establishing that service dogs cannot be surrendered by anyone other than their trained handler. Most importantly, the psychological evaluation and medical records proving my disability and need for her services. When they finally brought Luna out of the kennels, she nearly knocked me over with excitement. Her whole body was shaking, her tail was whipping, and a high-pitched whine of joy escaped her throat. She knew somehow. She always knew when I needed her most. I'm so sorry, Jennifer said, watching our reunion with obvious discomfort. We had no idea. The people who brought her in were very convincing. They seemed genuinely concerned about the cost of caring for her. They were concerned about costs, I replied, fastening Luna's leash. They just weren't concerned about the consequences. The drive home seemed to emerge from underwater. Luna in her usual spot in the passenger seat, her head out the window, everything returning to its proper order. But something fundamental had changed. The line my in-laws had crossed wasn't one you could uncross with apologies or explanations. It was 9 p.m. when my phone started ringing. Margaret first, her voice high-pitched with panic. "The bank says there's a problem with the emergency account," she said without greeting me. "What account?" "The savings account. The one where you put money for Harold's medicine and emergencies." I closed it. "You what? Why would you do that? You said pets were too expensive and that the money should go toward bills." "I'm following your advice." And that's when Margaret realized that something much bigger than a misunderstanding about a dog was going on. "That's completely different," Margaret yelled. "That money is for real emergencies, for necessities." "Like giving away someone's service dog?" I asked calmly. Silence. Then very carefully, "Service dog. Luna is a certified service dog, Margaret. She cost $25,000 to train. She's federally protected medical equipment, not a pet. And you gave her away to save $60 a month on dog food." More silence. I could hear Harold in the background asking what was wrong, his voice muffled but growing more agitated. "We didn't know," Margaret said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "You never asked. You just decided you knew better and took her. Well, you got her back. So what's the problem? Why are you punishing us for an honest mistake?" "The problem?" I looked at Luna, who was watching me with those intelligent brown eyes, reading my stress levels, ready to execute her trained responses if my anxiety spiked. "The problem is trust. I can't trust you anymore." Harold called an hour later, his voice tense and panicked in a way I'd never heard before. "The pharmacy says my insurance card isn't working for the copay. That's because I'm no longer covering the copays." "What do you mean?" "You set up automatic payments." "I canceled it." "You can't just stop helping me with my medication," he said, and for the first time there was real fear in his voice. "I need those pills." "Then you should have thought of that before giving away my dog." "It's just a dog. He's a $25,000 service dog trained to assist with my disability. But you guys decided he was just an expensive animal you could throw away." The line went quiet. I could hear him breathing, processing. "We made a mistake," he said finally. "Yes, you did. A very expensive mistake." My brother Trevor called the next morning. 2 years younger, perpetually broke, always calling with some crisis that required immediate financial assistance. "Mom says you're being psychotic over a dog," he said without preamble. "Mom says a lot of things." "Come on, man. It's just a dog. They're really struggling with the bills right now. Then they should get jobs that pay better. Or maybe you could help them out for once, instead of asking me for rent money every month." "I don't have money like you do." "I don't have money like me anymore either. I spent it all on a family that doesn't respect me." "That's really dramatic, Trevor," but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Yeah? When was the last time you helped them with anything other than asking me to help them?" "I help in other ways." "Name one." Silence. "I didn't think so. But somehow it's always my responsibility to finance their lifestyle while they make decisions about my property." During that week, I established my main strategy. It wouldn't just be about cutting off financial support, it would be about documenting everything and protecting myself legally from what I knew was coming. First, I photographed every receipt, every bank transfer, every text message related to requests for money from the past 2 years. I organized everything chronologically in a digital folder with backups in 3 different locations. Second, I sought out a lawyer who specialized in disability law. Dr. Patricia Chun had 20 years of experience in cases involving service dogs and knew exactly which laws Margaret and Harold had violated. Technically, she explained during our consultation, they committed a federal crime. Interfering with a service dog is punishable by up to $50,000 in fines and 1 year in prison. "I don't want to prosecute them criminally," I replied. "I just want to protect myself in case they try something." "I understand. But it's important for you to know that you have legal recourse if you need it." Third, I changed all my bank passwords and removed Margaret and Harold as emergency contacts on all my medical and financial documents. Fourth, I installed security cameras in my apartment. I knew my family well enough to know that when desperation really set in, they might try extreme measures. The real blow came on Saturday morning. I was at the dog park with Luna, working on her training exercises, the specific routines that kept her skills sharp and reinforced our working relationship, when my phone rang. Margaret, her voice shrill with panic. The mortgage payment bounced, she said without preamble. That's unfortunate. Don't play games with me. The bank says there are insufficient funds in the account. That's because I'm no longer covering the mortgage. You have to cover it. We're going to lose the house. Then you shouldn't have given me my dog. It was just a dog. I stopped walking. Luna immediately sat down beside me, sensing my sudden tension, her body alert and ready to execute her trained responses. Luna is a certified service dog trained to assist with post-traumatic stress disorder. She detects the onset of panic attacks and performs specific tasks to help me manage my disability. She's not just a dog. She's medical equipment that costs $25,000 and is protected under federal law. We didn't know about any disability, Margaret said, her voice lower now, but still defensive. Because I never told you. Because I've managed this privately with Luna's help, without burdening you with my problems. But you decided you knew better than my doctors, better than federal law, better than me. We made a mistake, she whispered. Yes, you did. A very expensive mistake that's going to cost me everything I've paid for. That afternoon, they showed up at my apartment. I watched from the window as they sat in their car for several minutes, clearly discussing strategy, what to say to fix this. When they finally came to the door, Margaret's eyes were red and swollen from crying. We need to talk, she said. I let them in, but didn't offer them coffee or ask them to sit down. Luna positioned herself between me and them, not aggressively, but protectively, the way she was trained to create space when she sensed my stress levels rising. We're so sorry, Harold said immediately. We didn't understand that Luna was a service dog. Her name is Luna. Right, Luna. We didn't understand about her being medical equipment. What else would happen when total despair set in? When they realized their financial situation was truly ruined without my constant support. If you're following this journey of family boundaries and consequences, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the final showdown was just beginning. The real devastation was yet to come, and when Margaret and Harold realized the full extent of what they had lost, their next actions would reveal exactly what kind of people they truly were. What do you understand? I asked, crossing my arms. Margaret and Harold looked at each other, clearly rehearsing their response. We understand that Luna is important to you, Margaret said carefully. More important than we realized. She's not important to me, I corrected gently. She's necessary to me. There's a difference. Right, necessary, Harold agreed quickly. And we're sorry we didn't understand that before. So you're saying that if you had known Luna cost $25,000, you wouldn't have given her to the shelter? They nodded vigorously. Interesting. Because when I asked about saving money, Margaret listed exactly how much we spent on Luna. You calculated every penny. But you never asked why I spent so much money on her. The silence stretched out. Luna shifted slightly, pressing herself closer to my leg, reading the growing tension in the room. The truth, I continued, is that you didn't care to understand. You saw numbers on a spreadsheet and decided you knew better how I should spend my money. It wasn't like that, Margaret began. It wasn't? Then explain to me how it was. Trevor finally spoke, his voice heavy with frustration. Look, everyone made mistakes here. But cutting our family off completely is cruel. They raised you. They're your parents. My in-laws, I corrected. And yes, they raised me. But raising someone doesn't give you the right to steal their property when they're an adult. Property. Harold laughed bitterly. She's just a dog, Samuel. There it was. Even after all the explanation, even knowing about the $25,000, even understanding that Luna was certified medical equipment, he still saw her as just a dog. Father, Margaret scolded him, but I shook my head. No, let him talk. This is enlightening. Harold leaned forward, his voice gaining confidence. Even if she's an expensive service dog, even if she helps with whatever your problem is, at the end of the day, she's an animal. Family is family, blood is blood. You can't just abandon those who loved and cared for you because of an animal. An animal, I repeated slowly. That's right, Harold continued, clearly thinking he had found solid ground. "And look what you're doing to us. We're going to lose our house. I can't buy my medicine. Your mother is having to use food stamps. All because of a mistake about a dog." Margaret was shaking her head frantically to get him to stop talking, but Harold was in familiar territory now, the emotional guilt that had always worked on me before. "Do you want to see us living on the street? Do you want me to die because I can't afford my heart medicine? Your own family." I took a deep breath, feeling Luna press closer to me, responding to my increased heart rate. "Harold," I said finally, "you just proved exactly why I can't trust you guys again." "What do you mean?" "You know now that Luna is a certified service dog. You know she cost $25,000. You know she's medically protected equipment under federal law. And yet Harold just called her just an animal, and said she's just a mistake about a dog." The realization began to dawn on Margaret's face. "You don't feel remorse for taking my medical equipment," I continued. "You feel remorse for the consequences you face for taking my medical equipment. There's a huge difference." "That's not true," Margaret protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's not? Then tell me, if I paid all your bills again, but kept Luna locked in my apartment so you could never make the mistake of giving her away again, would you be satisfied with that arrangement?" Silence was her answer. "That's exactly what I thought," I said. "You want me to trust you with my money, but you don't respect my decisions about my property. You want me to treat you like family, but you make unilateral decisions about my medical life." Trevor exploded. "You're being ridiculous. They said they were sorry." "Trevor, when was the last time you apologized to someone genuinely versus when you apologized because you wanted something?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. "You're not sorry you violated my trust," I said, looking at each of them. "You're sorry you found out it would cost you." Margaret began to cry. "Samuel, please. We're your family. We made a mistake, but we can't lose our home. We don't know what to do without your help. You should have thought of that before you gave Luna to the shelter. But we brought her back." Harold shouted. "You have your dog back." "After it cost me 6 hours of legal paperwork and federal documentation to prove you stole my medical equipment," I replied calmly. "And you still don't understand why that's a problem." That's when Harold played his final card, the only card he thought he had left. "Fine," he said, his voice growing low and dangerous. "If that's how you want to play, let's tell the whole family about your disability. Let's see how they feel about you cutting off elderly parents because of PTSD that no one even knew you had." The silence in the room was absolute. Luna stood up, positioning herself completely between me and Harold, her training kicking in response to the threat she sensed in his voice. "Harold," Margaret whispered in horror. But I started to smile. And it wasn't a kind smile. "Please do," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Please tell the whole family that I cut you off financially after you stole my medical equipment for my disability. Please explain to Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, and all the cousins how you took a $25,000 certified service dog from a veteran with PTSD and gave it to a shelter to save $60 on dog food." The color drained from Harold's face. "Please explain how, after years of giving me over $60,000 in financial support, you decided that my medical equipment was disposable. I'll even provide the federal documentation for you to show them." Margaret was staring at her husband with growing horror. "Actually," I continued, reaching for my phone, "how about I call Aunt Carol right now? We can have this family conversation immediately." "No," Harold said quickly. "Don't do that." "Why not? I thought you wanted to tell the family about my situation." And that was when Harold finally understood. Not just that he had lost, but that every attempt at blackmail, every threat, every emotional manipulation had only dug the hole deeper. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Samuel," Margaret tried one last time. "Now." They got up slowly, defeated. When they reached the door, Margaret turned one last time. "What if we tell everyone we're sorry? Publicly? If we do. I don't know, family therapy." I looked at her for a long moment. "Margaret, if you had accidentally destroyed someone's wheelchair, you would have offered to buy a new one. You stole my medical equipment on purpose and offered no apology. The difference speaks for itself." The door closed behind them with a final click. Luna looked at me, read my stress levels as low, and went to fetch her favorite toy. As if she knew the storm had finally passed. But the consequences for Margaret and Harold were only just beginning to fully manifest. The following weeks were chaotic for them, but peaceful for me. Calls I didn't answer. Text messages I deleted without reading. Voicemails filled with increasingly desperate pleas for help, for understanding, for just one more chance. I blocked all their numbers. The house went into foreclosure within 6 weeks. Harold's medication costs forced him to choose between medicine and food. Margaret's car broke down and remained broken because they couldn't afford to repair it. Trevor moved back into their house. 3 adults squeezed into a bankrupt home, all learning what life really costs when someone else isn't subsidizing it. I heard about their situation from my Aunt Carol, who called to lecture me about family responsibility and Christian forgiveness. "They're your in-laws," she said, her voice heavy with judgment. "You can't just abandon them like that." "They abandoned me first," I replied. "They just didn't call it that. They made a mistake." "They stole my medical equipment," I interrupted. "They took something that helps me manage a disability and gave it away to save money on dog food." Would you be having this conversation if they had pawned someone's wheelchair? 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "This is Attorney David Walsh," the voice said. "I represent your in-laws in their bankruptcy proceedings." "Congratulations, Mr. Henderson. Your in-laws are facing complete financial ruin. They are going to lose everything they own." "I am aware. They've asked me to contact you about a possible family settlement, some kind of arrangement that might help them avoid complete bankruptcy." I was quiet for a moment, watching Luna sleep peacefully in her bed next to my desk. Content, safe, exactly where she belonged. "Mr. Walsh," I finally said, "my in-laws gave away my service dog to save $60 a month on dog food. They thought my medical equipment was disposable property they could redistribute. Does that sound like people who understand the concept of family agreements?" "I understand there was a misunderstanding about the dog." "There was no misunderstanding. There was theft, and now there are consequences." I hung up and blocked that number too. A year later, I saw Margaret at the grocery store. She was using food stamps, her cart filled with generic brands and special offers from the manager. She saw me too, her face passing through shame, anger, and something that could have been hope. She approached slowly, like someone approaching an unpredictable animal. "How are you?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine. Luna's fine too." She visibly flinched at the name Luna. "I heard you bought a house." "I did. Big yard, quiet neighborhood. Luna loves having room to run." "That's nice. That's really nice." We stood there in awkward silence, other shoppers moving around us. The weight of everything left unsaid hung between us like a physical presence. "I want you to know," she finally said, "that we understand now about Luna, about what she really means to you." "You understand? We were wrong. We made a terrible mistake." I nodded. "Yes, you did. Is there any way? Can we fix this somehow?" I looked at her. I really looked at her. The woman who raised me, taught me to ride a bike, helped with homework, bandaged scraped knees. She was also the woman who gave away my service dog to save money on food. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Trust isn't something you can just fix with an apology. But we could try. If we really understood now." "You could try," I said. "But trying would mean understanding that Luna isn't negotiable, that my boundaries aren't suggestions, that my disability is real and my needs matter, even if you can't see them." She nodded eagerly. "We understand that now. We really do." "You understand? Because a year ago, you thought I was being dramatic about just a dog. What has really changed besides your financial situation?" She was quiet for a long time, processing the question. "Living without you has changed things," she said finally. "Seeing what it really costs to handle everything on our own." I left her there in the cereal aisle, still processing that distinction. When I got home, Luna was waiting at the door, tail wagging, ready for our evening walk. I clipped her leash to her collar and we stepped out into the golden evening light. 2 blocks from home, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A photo of a mixed-breed German Shepherd in a shelter cage accompanied by a message. Saw this guy at the shelter today. Thought you might want to give him a home too. It was from Trevor, his first attempt at contact in over a year, and he was suggesting that I adopt another dog. As if a service dog was interchangeable with any random shelter animal. As if he still didn't fundamentally understand who Luna really was or why she mattered. I deleted the message without responding and kept walking. Some people never learn, never change, never grow up. But that was their limitation now, not my problem. Luna looked at me, sensing my brief irritation, then wagged her tail and returned to her investigation of interesting smells on the sidewalk. Content in her work, safe in her home, exactly where she belonged. And for the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged too. The lesson here is simple. Family is not an excuse to disrespect boundaries or make decisions about someone else's life. When someone treats your medical equipment like disposable property, they reveal exactly how much your health and well-being mean to them. Margaret and Harold learned the hard way that actions have consequences, and that $63,000 in generosity does not buy the right to steal $25,000 worth of medical equipment. If this story of family boundaries and consequences resonated with you, subscribe to the channel right now. We have dozens of similar stories about people who thought they could trample on others without facing the devastating consequences of their actions. As for Margaret, Harold, and Trevor, last I heard, they were still learning the real value of financial independence. Me? Well, I was teaching Luna new tricks in the backyard of my own home.